Shalom Uberakuth Mishpacha, peace and blessings, family. In this video, we're going to be discussing, is it a sin to get a lineup or a fade? Now, just by looking at my hairstyle, you already probably know what I'm going to say. No, it is not a sin to get a lineup or a fade. Now, the reason why I want to make this video is because yesterday I was getting my haircut and I was just thinking, you know, a lot of brothers genuinely think this is a sin to get a lineup and have a fade. That's not the case. But the reason why our people think that is because when we go to the book of Leviticus, chapter 19 and verse 27, it states, "Ye shall not round the corners of your heads, neither shalt thou mar the corners of thy beard." Now, what's important is we need to know two things. One, we need to know the context. And two, we need to know what it says in Hebrew. Now, when it says round the corners of your head, in English, that could be very subjective. Your head is a round object. So what is the corner of it? And then mar the corner of your beard is a little bit more understandable. But again, what is the corner of your beard? When we just read the English translation, it can be very difficult to take in the full understanding of it. But when we go into the Hebrew, it starts to get a little bit more understandable, especially when we have some bit of preliminary historical understanding of the biblical environmental climate, what the people were doing, what their culture was like when our ancestors were in the land. Therefore, let's get right into it. First thing first, I'm going to read you guys the verse above it and the verse after it, and we can kind of get a little bit more context of what this verse is telling us. So we go to verse 26. It states, "Ye shall not eat anything with the blood, neither shall ye use enchantment nor observe times." So what do we see here? Eating things with the blood, that could either mean you're just eating raw meat just because you like it, or it could also mean you're doing some type of paganistic ritual blood magic, which people did in the forms of different types of witchcraft. They would consume blood of animals to take in the essence of the animal, specific attributes of the animal, specific powers or abilities that they believe that the animal would give them. And it says, "Neither shall you use enchantment nor observe times." Enchantment is basically witchcraft, basically spells, okay? Spells that are put upon things and upon people, etc. Observe times is like looking up in the stars, looking at the constellations and trying to figure out, okay, on January 14th, 2027, this is what's going to happen because the stars are going to align to this specific thing. That's observing times. And people make prophecies based off of that, right? For example, there was a lot of people would consider prophet Nostradamus of Europe, France specifically. He was a Jew, by the way. This was in the 1500s, and I believe he was a Negro, but he was observing times to get his prophecies. A lot of the prophecies were true, but a lot of them were not. That being said, Yah tells us not to observe times. So these are practices that Yah didn't want us doing because these practices were of the other nations and they involved other entities. When you do enchantments, for example, and witchcraft, what you are doing is you are communicating with other entities, whether you want to call them the fallen ones, whether you want to call them evil spirits, whether you want to call them other gods, whether you want to call them demons. That's what people are dealing with to get this type of esoteric knowledge of spells, witchcraft, and observing of times, knowledge of what can happen when you mess with animal blood and drink it and stuff like that. They're getting this from entities that they're actually communicating with, guys. Not to go off topic, but Solomon loved wisdom so much and got addicted to it that he started to venture off into that terrain as well. That's why he started to sacrifice to those false gods, which were really just, entities that had nothing to do with the Most High, to obtain even more deep esoteric knowledge. And that's what messed him up. Essentially, Solomon himself took the forbidden fruit. And Solomon is the one who wrote about the forbidden fruit. The forbidden fruit, family, is knowledge from the fallen one specifically. So anyway, and then when we read the verse after it, it says, verse 28, "Ye shall not make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead." There's a few things that ancient people used to do along those lines, right? So let me explain a few practices that I know of as a historian that ancient cultures used to do. For example, the Canaanites, it makes sense because, we're going into the land of Canaan. We're going to be in the midst of these people. The Canaanites would cut themselves and let the blood seep to the ground, a lot of times to invoke the spirits. These could be the spirits of the dead, or these could be the spirits of the gods that they are trying to invoke by shedding their blood to the ground. Now, this is what you know as bloodletting, okay? That's one form of making cuttings in your flesh for the dead. Another thing that people would do is cut themselves in mourning for the dead. So if somebody were to die in a family, they would literally cut themselves as a way to relieve the pain. And it says, "Nor print any marks upon you. I am Yahuwah." When we actually study why certain groups of people tattoo themselves, like when we look at the Polynesians, for example, those tattoos had to do with the ancestors, the dead. They would put certain gods on their tattoo. They would put, different symbols that would give them that they would believe to give them certain abilities. This is all in the realm of witchcraft, essentially. Okay, all in the realm of the forbidden fruit. That's what I want. Because all of this is fallen entity, either communication, either imitation, or acknowledgement. Now go back to Leviticus and read. You'll realize that every time it says "I am the Lord" at the end of a law, that's because it finished a paragraph of a set of laws that all have to do with each other. So you see those 3 laws, and then at the end of the 3rd law it said "I am the Lord." That means all 3 of those laws related to each other. If you don't believe me, go back in Leviticus and look. You'll see every time it says "I am the Lord," that means it finished talking about a specific topic, a specific subject that the laws are about. Meaning all 3 of these laws are relating to each other. We're going to read this verse 27 once more again, and it's all going to come together. We're talking about people seeking power from these fallen entities, okay, that corrupted mankind. In verse 27 it says, "Ye shall not round the corners of your heads, neither shalt thou mar the corners of thy beard." Now we have to read this in Hebrew now, because you're probably like, what does that have to do with anything that you just talked about? Okay, understandable. Let's read in Hebrew. Verse 27 says in Hebrew, "La tekafu pa'at rashkam tashachith pa'at zakanka." And that means, do not surround or circulate, okay, the sides of your head, nor destroy the sides of your beard. And that means do not circulate the sides of your heads, nor destroy the sides of your beard. Now we have to understand, what do they mean by circulate the sides of your head? Takafu is the word for surround, circulate. It comes from the primitive root nakaf, which means to compass or to go around, to enclose or to surround. In other words, to circulate something. And you're not supposed to do that to your head. So what is it talking about? Because obviously they was wearing miters and headbands in scripture, and that was okay. So what are they talking about? This is talking about a more sinister type of circulating the head, I should say. We're talking about cranial binding here. Cranial binding, all right? Now, that's when ancient cultures would take their babies and their children, and they will wrap their heads with bands made from string, made from animal hide, around the skull so tight that it literally separates the plates of the cranium, because the skull, it has many different bones in it. It's not just one bone, and it's separated by a thin layer of tissue. And this tissue can stretch when they are a child. That tissue can stretch. Those bones can separate from each other, and eventually that bone will cover the rest of the tissue, all the soft spots. You'll just have a long head. So what they did was they intentionally modified the bodies of their children to have these disfigured long heads. Now this, you will come to understand, it is actually the most common and the most ancient and the most widespread form of bodily modification of humanity. And this has been practiced for thousands of years. You might have some people like in Central Africa still alive like that, but for the vast majority, nobody practices this anymore. But in thousands of years ago, especially in Tauridical times, this tradition was popping. The reason why these cultures all did this, and look, when I say widespread, I'm telling you widespread. Cultures that never even had contact with each other. We're talking about North America, Central America, South America, Europe, Asia, the Middle East, Australia, and Africa. Every single human inhabited continent on the earth had this practice. You understand? That's what I mean when I say widespread. Very widespread. Cultures, like I said, who did not have any contact with each other. If you were to look at the paintings of the Mayans, you would see how their head look all weird. Very sloped back forehead. Their eyes kind of pop out a little bit. Their nose is like a beak on their face. That's because they cranially modified their babies. All the Mayans who were of royal lineage did this. In fact, you will notice that in every culture around the world that had this practice, it was only reserved for the royal class of that culture. So it gets a little weird here, guys. It gets a little weird because not just the Mayans, we're also talking about the Incans. We're also talking about certain Central African tribes, especially in the Congo rainforest, within, even the Pygmy groups, as well as some of the Bantu groups. We see it with white Europeans having this practice, prior to Christianity. We even see it with the Aboriginals of Australia, just isolated people that, never had contact with these other people that I'm talking about. It's just so random. So you have to ask yourself, what the hell? Why are they doing this? And the reason is they are actually trying to mimic the people who they call the sky people, okay, or the gods. The Aztecs, for example, called these people the maize gods, okay, the ones who came from the heavens to give them corn. This correlates with the Central African belief that there was a heavenly people from the stars who came down to allow them to have certain agricultural advancements. You ever look at an image of Queen Nefertiti or King Akhenaton of Kemet and ask yourself why their head's so long? It's because of cranial elongation. See, in these cultures, to have a long head was to be like the gods. Okay, now they believe that certain bloodlines within every group descend from these gods. Okay, and to distinguish yourself from the rest of the common folk, right, you would, practice cranial modification. This is what we see. And it's just to mimic the fallen ones, essentially. A lot of the fallen ones had these elongated heads, apparently. Now, when it says, do not destroy the side of your beard, we're talking about the word shakath, which means to destroy or to corrupt the side of your beard. That's talking about the horn of your beard, guys. The part of your beard that looks like the horn of a bull, that's to be left intact. Yah commands us Israelite men not to destroy it. So you don't shave it off, you don't pluck it off. Plucking it off was actually what many cultures did in ancient past. When a child went through puberty and he started to grow hair on the side of his face, they plucked it off. They plucked off the beards in many cultures around the world, actually. A lot of Asian cultures, a lot of American cultures. They plucked the beard off. It was a part of Greek culture, get rid of the beard. Certain Asian cultures like the Mongolians, the samurai, they would get rid of the beard. Certain American cultures like the Aztecs, they would get rid of the beard. The Mayans will get rid of the beard. The Olmec got rid of the beard. You got to ask yourself, why are they getting rid of the beard? Because in these cultures, to have a beard was impure or animalistic in nature. In these cultures, they had their own gods, and their gods had their own rules. And a part of these rules oftentimes was you had to be clean shaven if you wanted to make offerings, go inside of the temple of that god, etc., etc. But y'all wanted Israelite men to express the beard. This was one thing that set us apart from the other people surrounding us. Hair is a big part of identity, and this is what people have to understand. Even if you go to Africa, different tribes have different hairstyles, because this is what sets you apart from people that look just like you. When we were in the land, we were surrounded by Canaanites and Mitzris, Assyrians, and all these different people. And they essentially all look just like us. So we must look different from them in the best way that we could. And the beard is one thing. Now, so a quick recap here just to make sure you're all understanding. The reason why lining up your beard or lining up your head or getting a fade is not a sin is because historically speaking, this practice was never used to communicate with, to learn from, or to imitate other entities that were not of Yah, other gods. It was not used for worshiping or communicating with the dead. It was not for any of that. Now, the reason I call this the horn of the beard is because, of course, it looks like a horn. And if you look at the Aleph, the letter A in Hebrew, it's the shape of a bull's head, if you look at it. But it's also, if you ask me, the shape of a beard and a mustache. Now, it represents power or strength. Now, we have to understand that your beard as a man is a symbol of your power and your strength, especially the horn of the beard. A lot of our men, they only rock the goatee look. They think it looks better, understandable. But in the eyes of the Most High, it does not. The Most High wants us to have the full beard because he gave us the full beard. Now, to cut it low, that's okay. But the Most High said, do not destroy it. You can cut it low, but you cannot destroy it, which means you cannot remove it. So if you think it's a problem to simply line it up, that's not destroying it. You still have the horns of your beard. All right. As long as you did not destroy the horns of your beard, As long as you did not pluck every hair out individually or shave the side of your beard, you are still keeping that law. You understand? That being said, that's the simple explanation of this scripture. I know I just made it seem kind of complex, but it's really not. The Most High is simply saying, don't do cranial modification. That's pagan. And he's also saying, don't shave the sides of your beard, because these people around you do that for their purification rituals for their gods. We're supposed to be holy for Yah, not for these other entities. Peace.